Hate incident transgender identity is an incident that is perceived by the victim or any other person to have been perpetrated on the grounds of malice or ill will against someone's transgender identity. Such a transgender identity can be actual or perceived. It includes transsexual people, transvestite people, intersex people, and anyone who has a gender identity which is not simply a standard male or female gender identity. For example, a hate incident transgender identity would be recorded if a person who was assaulted because they were perceived to be temporarily cross-dressing, or if they were assaulted because they were perceived to have undergone gender reassignment.
My name's Alana Strain. I'm also a male to female transsexual. I had a good male life, to be quite honest, but when I was approximately the early 40s, I discovered the internet, and I discovered there were other people like me. And through talking to others, I realised, yeah, I wasn't alone, and I could actually put labels to what I was feeling. And those days, the very early days, we had very famous people who were transitioning, or they became famous because of the media. It was a new concept, it was a new phenomenon, so it attracted a lot of publicity. I knew I was very similar to those people, but it wasn't until later you started actually digging into it, and I found out what the true meaning of being a transsexual actually is. Because I was born just after the war years, things were actually different then. And if you were born male, you were expected to be male. There was no dubiety about it. You had to live that life. I mean, gay people in those days weren't accepted either, and that was a much more well-known phenomenon, if you like, than being transsexual. I read about it, I talked to different people, and I finally decided that was the life that I wanted. That's a life I always should have had. I began my transition almost 7 years ago now, when I first started taking hormones. I decided the transition route was the only one for me, and I had to get down the surgical side of it. Yeah, there are benefits personally to transitioning, but there's a lot of heartache involved with this, and it's not an easy decision, and we don't make these decisions lightly. I haven't actually been subjected to physical violence. Mine's been actually more on the mental side of things. People have, been making phone calls and making rude remarks over the phone, and just probably because they haven't got the nerve to stand up in front of me. I reported these crimes. I did report them. On another occasion, when I was seeing someone off in their car, then a car came flying by on the main road, which is just next to where I used to live, and the driver shouting the word freak. And again, they haven't got the nerve to stand up and actually say that to my face. And it really turned my mind back into myself, and I felt myself becoming introverted. So much so that the thoughts of suicide actually ran through my mind. I realised by transitioning and coming out that I was hurting my family. Although they appeared to accept it at the start, it didn't turn out that way. Probably one of the first incidents I ever came across, when I first came out, I was actually with Alex, and we were in a pub in Falkirk, and there was this drunk who was actually quite a bit of a lech. He was looking for girls to pick up, and he was going round various tables. And it came to where Alex and I were sitting now. Unfortunately, she'd went to the toilet, and this guy sat down and looked at me and then walked away. And from about 5 or 6 feet away, he says, "It's all right, you're okay. I know you're still a guy." Now, I didn't report that because the guy was drunk, and what would be the point of it? It wasn't going to solve a problem, and it was actually, it hurt me. It didn't hurt me at the time. I just dismissed it. I laughed it off, and I told Alex about it. We sort of laughed it all off, but it stayed with me for weeks, and it was actually probably the first incident I ever came across, and it started that thickening of the skin process. So everything else that has been happening subsequent to all that has been built up in layers. And I feel as though, because I'm transsexual, I'm having to build these layers and isolate myself from a lot of emotional things that would hurt me. And I do have to stop experiencing them, or else I'm going to get hurt even more. And I'm not prepared to go through all that. As I said, when it's concerning almost outside parties, strangers and what have you, yes, I will report them. I will have absolutely no hesitation in reporting. And on the incidents I have reported, I got help from the police and from victim support. When I do come across incidents from other people who tell me what's been happening to them, I encourage them to actually report anything untoward, anything that's abusive. I still am very reluctant to report on any crimes or even incidents which have been involved in the family, simply because they are my family, and one day I'm hoping they will accept me for what I am, and the last thing I want to do is actually just stir up trouble for them. So my point here is, if you have an incident, report it.